What's up, you guys? Sean Rossab, managing editor, FightfulMMA.com, and we have a big one for you. It is July 2nd on the Fightful MMA podcast. We're going to recap UFC Minneapolis. We're going to preview UFC 239, talk about the possible implications of this much adjusted UFC International Fight Week, and we're going to talk or preview the Bellator show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame inductees that are coming our way, as Joe, I'm sure, has experience with many of them. May I ask, who's Joe? Joe is Joe Ferraro, Showdown Joe. Joins us on this show. You all can find him at Joe A. Ferraro on Twitter. Joe, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. Just
happy belated Canada Day.
I didn't think you were going to say it. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it was an interesting weekend to say the least. Lots of relaxation, lots of I got burned. I got sunburned, which is I don't complain when I get sunburned, Sean, because we only get like 4 or 5 months of really hot weather here if we're lucky. So wonderful weather over here, great times. No complaints around the city, from my understanding, around the country. So far so good. But yeah, lots to talk about this week. It's an interesting week coming up, a huge pay-per-view card, and a crazy event that happened last Saturday. So
let's go ahead and talk about that event that happened last Saturday. UFC Minneapolis. I did not do a live post show. There was an AEW show that night, and that kind of took precedence over this event. But it was a good one. I thought that a lot of good stuff happened. Unfortunately, our boy, Junior Albini, probably got bounced from the UFC. But Maurice Green won. Amanda Ribas, after all the mess she's been through with USADA and all that garbage, came back after a 3-year layout and won. Eric Anders got a win that he needed, and a decisive win that he needed at 205 pounds. Ricardo Ramos did exactly what he was supposed to do against Journey Newsom. You had Jared Gordon defeating Dan Moret. You had Alonzo Minifield continuing to be impressive over Paul Craig. Drew Dober just collapsed Marco Polo Reyes. Vince Pichel surprised Roosevelt Roberts. What stood out to you the most here? Because to me, I'm looking at Eric Anders, I'm looking at Amanda Ribas, and I'm looking at Drew Dober and saying those are the ones that were the most important to me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Amanda Ribas submission, the minute she got mount, or the second she got mount, it was ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. And then Emily had to give up her back, and in adjusting the position, bang, put herself into the rear naked choke. So that was a good finish there by Ribas. Of course, Eric Anders against Vinicius. I mean, the way he stuffed that takedown when Vinicius went in there, I was thinking of you, thinking, have you ever seen that where a guy? I mean, my son goes in for takedowns on me, and that's how I defend it. I just turn my hip because he's a third of the weight of what I weigh. So the way Eric just completely defended that takedown and then put in that finish. I get they were complaining about the stoppage and the referee should have stepped in sooner, but watch it in real time. I mean, the referee got in there as quickly as he could. I know there was some unanswered punches. I get it. But Drew Dober is a bad man as well. Holy smokes. Those lefts were landing like bombs, man. So felt super bad for Marco Polo Reyes, but Drew Dober looking in really good shape there, looking really good in that performance.
Drew Dober has now won 4 of his last 5. He's won, I think, 6 of his last 8. That is a hell of a streak for a guy who was just a guy. He came into the UFC and he almost lost his way out of the UFC. You don't get put in the UFC and then lose your first 2 fights and hang around an awful lot.
I do want to talk about one thing, though, Sean. Dulce Lijumbala. That dude's a middleweight, is he not?
I think so.
Yeah, he comes in at light heavyweight, and I know it went to the 3rd round, but oh my goodness, did he just pop off on Dequan Townsend? Like that was pretty impressive. I want to see him come in at 185 pounds. I think that'd be a fantastic infusion to that division.
And he was supposed to fight Justin Ledet. Now I think that he's fought at heavyweight, not middleweight. He's fought at heavyweight before. As opposed, I don't think he's fought at middleweight for a while. But
if he can cut there, that's fast, man. He's fast.
Yeah, I know he's done like 195-pound fights too. I know that he's done some of that. So I don't know the likelihood that he'll do that. But he was supposed to fight Justin Ledet. That didn't end up happening, and he got a big win. But we do have 3. I mentioned Eric Anders too. Eric Anders badly needed this win. He had lost 3 fights in a row. He had lost at light heavyweight. He'd lost at middleweight. It just wasn't right for him. It wasn't the right fit. What happened with Eric Anders is I don't want to compare it to Francis Ngannou, but Eric Anders let his hands go and he won fights.
Yeah.
That's how it works out for him. The UFC's got to be thrilled about that. That's a guy that they've had in pretty high profile situations coming back and getting a win. Speaking of, the old knuckleballer does it again. Damian Maia gets it done. I don't want to see this guy retire. I don't want to see this guy hang it up. I don't want to see this guy even entertain the idea of not fighting anymore. After losing 3 in a row. Now keep in mind, Joe. Well, let's run through the losses.
Yep.
Damian Maia, Kamaru Usman, champion. Colby Covington, champion. Tyron Woodley, champion. Rory McDonald back in the day, champion. Jake Shields was a champion all over the place. Chris Weidman, champion. Anderson Silva, champion. Nate Marquardt, Strikeforce champion. Really the only one is Mark Munoz. And that was at a point where Mark Munoz was just at his hottest. Mark Munoz was at his career peak, his physical peak, everything. Damian Maia has come back and beat Lyman Good and Anthony Rocco Martin. Not champions, but, well, Lyman Good was in Bellator. But very good fighters. What did you think of his performance? It was a majority decision. It was incorrectly read as a unanimous decision. What did you think?
Well, that shouldn't have been a majority decision. It was a unanimous decision, in my opinion. He won the first 2 rounds.
It would have to be a unanimous decision, in your opinion.
Right? I mean, he basically dominated the first 2 rounds, or he won the first 2 rounds, per se. And in the 3rd round, he went on cruise control. He's like, I'm going to just ride the next 5 minutes, play it a little safe, not get hurt. Typical Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Damian Maia. I don't want to get touched in the face. I've already beaten this guy. I've won 10 minutes of the 15. I'm going to cruise here and get the victory. Sucks for most people to see that kind of stuff. You don't always want to see it, but, he's the knuckleballer. Like you said, he's getting older and he doesn't need that damage.
All the media scorecards had it for Maia. 80% had it for Maia on fan scoring, 14% at a draw. There were 6% of people who apparently felt like they should troll for some reason. When you look at this type of performance, how much longer do you think that Maia can do it? He's 41 right now. When you look at it, let me see when he was born. So he's about 41 and a half. He'll be 42 this year. But he's still getting it done. Now, is he getting it done in exciting fashion? Not always. He did against Lyman Good, and that was great. Usman, Covington, Woodley, we're not going to accuse those of being like the greatest fights in the world. Same for the Masvidal, I think Masvidal fight as well. But we've seen him 3 years ago put away Condit really well. He clearly still has that with Lyman Good. I don't think that's going away, Joe. No, I think his reaction time might, but I don't think his ability in that regard will.
Just say yes or no. I'm going to throw out these names to you, all above him in the rankings, and you tell me if he can beat them or not. Leon Edwards.
Right now, I don't think so.
Robbie Lawler.
Possibly.
Ponzinibbio.
Yeah, I think he's at 50, maybe 45, 55 Ponzinibbio.
Anthony Pettis.
Yeah.
Stephen Thompson.
Yeah.
Darren Till.
For sure.
Ben Askren.
I would love to see that fight.
That's the fight that you and I spoke about.
That's a fight we got to see.
That's the one we got to see. Jorge Masvidal would be a rematch, and then there's RDA, and then the rematch is potentially with Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley, and Kamaru Usman. So it's safe to say he still can compete in this division. That Ben Askren fight is one I really, really, really want to see because Askren's a fantastic wrestler, can take anybody down at 170 pounds, and Damian Maia be like, okay, you can take me down. Let me work.
Do you think we're in another stretch for Maia? Well, obviously it depends on the opponents. He had that Magny, Gunnar Nelson, Matt Brown, Carlos Condit thing. I can't remember if it was 14 strikes or 14 significant strikes he ate over those 4 fights. Yeah. He's now in a 2-fight stretch where he's taken 22. That's it. And we were also at a point, those 3 fights that I mentioned, those high-level fights, where he didn't get any takedowns. Well, now he's got 5 over his last 2 fights.
Yeah. By the way,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
Joseph Boza made a really good point in the chat. He saw the cards online. Both of us forgot to mention this. That one judge that made it a majority decision gave the round to Anthony 10-8.
Yeah, that was weird.
Jesus, if you think that's a 10-8, What do you call all the other rounds that have been scored 10-8, like 10-7s, 10-6s? Are you
Man,
mad?
I'm just so fascinated with Damian Maia because,
Oh,
quite frankly, we've never quite seen anything like it. We've never seen a guy fight into his mid-40s with this specific skill set. We've seen Randy Couture do it, but we both know, Joe, there are way bigger differences to Randy Couture and what he did and his style than what Damian Maia is doing. And I would argue Damian Maia is probably going to be doing it against higher level opponents consistently than Randy Couture. And that's the issue, consistently. Because look at the people that Couture beat in his last run. Brandon Farrer was all right, sure. Mark Coleman, that was not the Mark Coleman in his prime. James Toney, that was hilarious. We needed that. But he was beating Tim Sylvia and Gabriel Gonzaga, pretty damn good heavyweights at that point. But I mean, I want to see Damian Maia keep continuing to compete at this top 15 level and do it consistently. And I'm not trying to really crap on what Randy Couture did, but also Randy Couture, Randy Couture won 3 fights in a row one time in his UFC career. Or maybe twice, maybe if you count the first one, but the comparisons aren't necessarily there because of the skill discrepancy that we're facing. I don't think Damian Maia is going to face James Toney. But if he fought another legend on the level of Mark Coleman compared to Randy Couture, I know I'm all over the place here, but this is just something that we haven't seen this side of Randy Couture. And I wonder how much longer we're going to see it.
Yeah, like I said, we ran up and down that division. I want to see him continue competing. I still believe he has it. I still believe he can compete with the division's best. And you just never know with a guy like that. I harken back to that Tyron Woodley fight, right? Because the Tyron Woodley fight, people were saying he's the worst takedown artist in the game. Damian Maia sucks, can't get a takedown if his life depended on it. Okay, well, yeah, recency bias. Because if he was able to get Tyron Woodley down, who knows what we'll be talking about today? We could be talking about Damian Maia as a world champion, right? So it's all those situations. Kamaru Usman fought a perfect fight versus Damian Maia. Stay away. Do not let him near you. Do what you got to do, and just don't engage. That's smart, cerebral mixed martial arts. But Damian Maia doesn't need much. If he can get that clinch on you and get one leg wrapped around yours, you're going to the ground.
I should put a little more respect on Randy Couture's name because at the same age that Damian Maia is at, he was beating Vitor Belfort. And he got crushed by Liddell a couple times, but he did come back even a year after that and beat Tim Sylvia and Gabe Gonzaga. I think it's very clear Damian Maia ain't doing that. We saw him against 3 of the best fighters in the division. It ain't working. But that remains to be seen. Joseph Benavidez deserves a title shot, Joe. And you know what he deserves it at? Whatever division he wants it. 125 or 135 at this point. And if he can't do that, I'd love to see him fight Aljamain Sterling. Peter Yan is hurt. Henry Cejudo is hurt. Would not mind seeing Benavidez and Aljamain Sterling for the right to face Cejudo at whatever division is going on. He looked outstanding against Formiga. And I thought it was disrespectful to Benavidez that Formiga was even ranked ahead of him. All due respect to Formiga. He had won 4 fights in a row. He had won 5 out of his last 6. Benavidez has lost to Sergio Pettis and Demetrius Johnson in his UFC career ever. Benavidez deserves a title shot, Joe. What do you think?
Yeah, I think at this point here, obviously with Cejudo being out, it's up to Joseph Benavidez what he wants to do for the UFC's flyweight division, and or if he wants to compete at 135 pounds. Even Aljamain Sterling, I think he tweeted out that he gets it, he understands it. Benavidez is I think he called him a legend. He deserves a title shot ahead of him. But that's the fight to make. If Benavidez wants to fight, and it's got, in my opinion, it's got to be Sterling, and it's the right to fight Henry Cejudo. And even if Aljamain was to win that fight, make that fight at 125 or 135 pounds, right? Wherever that fight needs to take place, get it done. Now, at the same time, Benavidez has the right to call his shot in this situation. He can compete at 125, which I'm sure is what he wants to do. But if the UFC said, look, we can only do this at 135, rest assured he'll say yes. He might put up a bit of a fight, but not much.
And the thing is, he has a history with Cejudo. There was that controversial fight. It was all over the place. And as Boza mentioned, you could argue he beat Sergio Pettis. Very well, you could argue that. And I'll pull up the MMA decisions numbers, but even Aljamain Sterling said, listen, man, would I be mad if I didn't get a title shot against Cejudo? Yeah. Would I understand it? Yeah. I got a lot of respect for Aljamain Sterling for being that man, for being a sportsman and saying that, because it ain't always easy to swallow that pill. It's not. And let's be honest, we don't expect this division to go anywhere, this flyweight division. Will they cut Formiga? No, probably not. They want him to hang around and be a bantamweight, I would imagine. But other than that, you're going to see guys like Matt Schnell and Paiva and Alex Perez and Kai Kara-France and all these people probably get paired away. You're probably going to see them get paired off and the loser gets cut. That's what I would assume anyway. When you look back at the Benavidez-Pettis scores, it was down the middle as far as media. Maybe about 55% had it for Pettis, but 65% of fans scored that for Benavidez. So, I mean, I look at that too, and I weigh that. Damn, man. He deserves that title shot. And, Joe, I want everybody to go back and look at the backstage interview. I can't remember who it was with. But when he got interviewed, I feel like it was with Helwani after his second loss to Demetrius Johnson. And Benavidez, you could see it in his face. He was like, I may never get a chance again. Not just the title.
Distraught.
Not just a shot. He didn't, or not just the title. He thought he would never get a shot again because who was going to beat Demetrius Johnson? And now he's got that. And it's just amazing to me. Like that's one of the first times I felt heartbroken for a fighter, Joe. Yeah. I saw him and he was just like depressed. It's cool to see that he wasn't a front runner, Joe. He didn't say, you know what, I'm going to go to a different division. I'm going to go to a different company. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to take stupid fights. He kept fighting the best fighters in his division and he earned it, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's stranger things have happened in MMA. I mean, that interview there after that fight there, because it was a terrible loss. I think that was the knockout loss, if I'm not mistaken, to Demetrius Johnson. Yes. So you coming after that, you got to do a post-fight interview. You just realize you get hit in the face with a dose of reality. What you don't think about is how different things can happen. There used to be a while Diaz was competing for after every single fight would call out George St. Pierre. And we would laugh. We're like, dude, what are you talking about? You're never going to fight George St. Pierre. You're with Strikeforce. He's with the UFC. It's just not going to happen. And we would laugh until the day came that the UFC they purchased Strikeforce. And all of a sudden, we were all like, oh my God, the Diaz GSP fight is actually going to happen. There was a guy named Conor McGregor. I'm not sure if you guys know who that is. He once said he wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather, and we all laughed at it. Never going to happen. Not going to happen. So this game itself, the game of the UFC and combat sports and MMA in general, things have a way of just getting twisted. And before you know it, guys getting knocked out by losing to the champion a second time are distraught. They're never going to get a chance at a title shot. Well, that champion gets beat. The new one comes in there, who you actually beat, and he's the champ. You work your way to another title shot. So good for Joseph Benavidez.
Joseph Boza, while I respect your opinion, it was mentioned you'd said, I feel like 125 was formed because Mighty Mouse lost to Dominic Cruz. Now that Mighty Mouse is gone, Dana doesn't care about the division. He was more worried about getting his pets to be champions. Mighty Mouse was never a pet of Dana White's. If anything, he was a thorn in Dana White's side. Flyweight was started because you had Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson and Daryl Montague and Joseph Benavidez and Jussier Formiga and Yura Shitani and all these people. You had an Ali Bagatinov coming up. You had Kyoji Horiguchi developing. You had all the Ian McCall was around.
McCall because of all the stuff that was happening. What company was it?
Tachi Palace.
Palace, yeah. That was. And people were loving Ian McCall back then for sure.
There was Dustin Ortiz. There were a lot of fighters there that, especially in Tachi Palace fights. And Tachi Palace fights was smart. They were like, hey, you know what? You all don't want to book like all these people? We'll do it. I think Yamaguchi, Mamoru Yamaguchi was another name that was pretty well known.
That's right, with the afro. I loved him.
Out of Shuto. And Tachi Palace was like, you know what? We'll book all these people. And UFC took those guys. It's like I remember back then, I fired up my old WMMA game, Joe, and there were names there. There were people I was like, damn, there are a lot of good flyweights there, and there still are. But now a lot of these guys are seeing, maybe it doesn't work best to do that. Look at Kyoji Horiguchi. He is one of the best bantamweights in the world. And I think that's amazing. Tell you what's also amazing, Joe. We were right on the money. We weren't necessarily right with the picks, but either a 1 minute thrashing or a sustained beatdown. It was a 1 minute thrashing. Francis Ngannou drilled Junior Dos Santos, put him away. That's a wrap. Francis Ngannou should be booked for the Cormier-Stipe show against a striker. Just a striker. Don't care who. But he should be the insurance policy in case Cormier or Stipe falls out. What did you think of this fight?
I was stunned. Absolutely stunned. Only because I had my eye on Junior Dos Santos winning this fight. But Ngannou, we talked about it. He just got to touch you once. Once he touches you, body shuts down. You're running for, you've got to get away. And if you can't get away and you fall, he's going to jump on top of you and hammer fist you until you either go to sleep, you either tap out, or the referee stops the fight. And this guy is something else. He's just got brutal power. I don't know who he should face next. I'm tempted to say Derek Lewis. I know nobody wants to run that fight back, but maybe it's an example for Francis Ngannou to say, okay, you know what? I screwed up in that fight. My head wasn't in the right place. Let's do it again. Give me that rematch. Let me hurt this guy. But other than that, I mean, who else can you put him against? I mean, there's Volkov. You're not going to put him against Overeem. You're not going to put him against Velasquez or Olenek. I mean, there aren't that many options right now for Francis Ngannou other than the winner of DC and Stipe Miocic. So it'll be interesting to see what the UFC does with him, and if they do decide to put him on that same card, which I think is always a fantastic idea. But, I mean, there's times when the UFC does things, Sean, as you know, we're just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, this is good for the UFC, I think, and all. Junior Dos Santos, whether he won or lost, I don't think his appeal was necessarily going to be affected, because everybody knows who Junior Dos Santos is. You can put him on the card. He'll attract names. Francis Ngannou needed to be at the top. He needed to show that he could do it. And, Joe, in case the recipe was ever in question, Francis Ngannou throws his fist at somebody's face, and usually they don't last very long after that, right?
Yeah. There's some videos I saw on Instagram of people saying, let's see your kicks, and they had like Thai instructors holding pads for him or whatever. I think it was on the UFC, was it the UFC channel? Or UFC Instagram, and Ngannou kicked through the Thai pad, and the guy went flying across, like just his body completely turned over, right? So the guy was was smaller than Ngannou, but was it you that posted the picture of Ngannou and no, it was Brock Lesnar and somebody else. And Lesnar looked like a regular dude. I was like, holy, who's this guy? Wow. So, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Ngannou winning is good for the UFC, I think.
Yeah, no, he's fearless. He has that aura about him that people will be. They want to tune in because he's a monster. He's an absolute monster, and you got to have, take nothing away from DC and Stipe Miocic. DC's a great fighter, right? He can win fights with any way he likes because he's that talented. He's got the dad bod, right? People love that. Then you got Stipe Miocic, who really isn't the champion that people really gravitated to because he's just a regular blue collar guy. He just goes back and does his work back home and whatever, blah, blah. Ngannou's a monster. And when you think of the heavyweight division, be it in boxing or MMA or just in general, big, scary men. You know what I'm saying? Like a big monster. He fits that mold.
So as part of this show, I'm very excited to talk about the 2019 UFC Hall of Fame. We have a few inductees. Michael Bisping, the headliner. He was just such a consistent, long-running name in the sport. And Joe, MMA is so much different than other sports. Like, we've never seen an MLB, NFL, NBA Hall of Famer come back and fight. It's not out of the realm of possibility that a Bisping fights. It's not out of the realm of the possibility that Rashad Evans fights again. I mean, is it likely? No. But is it possible? Yes. And we've seen Hall of Famers fight. BJ Penn still technically fights. He stands up and falls over when he gets hit. But Michael Bisping, UFC Hall of Famer. First off, I'll just throw it out there. Is he worthy? Kind of a setup question for you to knock it down anyway. But your thoughts on that and him going into the Hall of Fame?
I'm not sure if he's worthy. I don't really have much of an issue with it because the guy did so much for the sport. He's a great character. He's a fantastic fighter. Obviously became a world champion. You could always count on Michael Bisping to not only come out there and fight and put on fantastic fights, but also stir the pot. He did a great job for the UFC and moving the needle. It did just amazing things for the UFC in England and in Europe in general. So yeah, I kind of really don't have too much of an issue with it. But there are other people that I'm still kind of wondering, like, what's like, why isn't George St. Pierre being nominated for the Hall of Fame? Why isn't Big John McCarthy some way somehow being inducted into the Hall of Fame? It is kind of weird, but am I going to lose sleep over Michael Bisping being inducted into UFC Hall of Fame? No, not at all.
And that's the same argument that you'll hear out of wrestling fans too. Why isn't this person in? Why isn't this person in? Well, this doesn't mean necessarily that those other people won't get in, because of course they will. Big John will get in the contributor wing, of course. And as we look over the career of Bisping, he won the middleweight title, beating Rockhold, he beat Dan Henderson. And you look at that resume. Wins over Anderson Silva along the way, Chris Lieben, Matt Hamill. Those are actually the wins that stand out more. Brian Stann, I think it was his longevity, his influence, and his impact that brought him there. Rashad Evans, on the other hand, he was a light heavyweight champion. He beat guys like Rampage Jackson when they were perceived to be in their prime at the very least. Another Ultimate Fighter guy. He beat Forrest Griffin, Chuck Liddell. He beat Bisping. He beat Bonner. Like I mentioned, Rampage, Tito Ortiz, Phil Davis, who's still doing it, Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen. I think that despite the way that Rashad Evans' career ended, I think that his resume is much more impressive, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But, it is what it is. I mean, I've been down in these UFC Hall of Fame ceremonies, and they're really nice. They're really good to be a part of. Sometimes guys get emotional. But they're fun to be a part of, and again, like I said, not taking anything away from Michael, but at the same time, there's people that I'm thinking like should be ahead of him, and I think you put it succinctly. There'll come a time when they're going to be put in there.
Speaking of the Diego Sanchez Clay Guida fight being inducted, I think this is an amazing way to get people like that in this Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Not champions, but Clay Guida and Diego Sanchez are such important. I don't want to call them role players. I don't want to call them good hands or anything like that. Guys like that are integral to what makes the UFC. It's not always the main event. It's not always the title fight. You got to have moments. You got to have special things like that. And damn it, Joe, that was a real special fight.
Those guys were teeing off on each other at one point where the hair was flying for Clay and Diego biting down on his mouthpiece. I mean, that goes down in MMA lore. That goes down in history as some of the craziest moments within a mixed martial arts bout. So yeah, I mean that was a fantastic fight. I think it was absolutely incredible, and throw it in there. Why not? I mean, there's other bouts that should be in there as well, but that's one for sure.
Now, have they announced a contributor? They've
2019, no.
Yeah, I don't think they've done. They're real consistent with that, with like contributor wings and all that stuff in modern era and the fight and stuff. I like the idea that they have multiple wings. I think that'd be cool. But yeah, it's good to see these guys go into the Hall of Fame. It is. I think it's important to the sport, and it lets these people be remembered. Now, I'll hit you with this one, Joe. Make an early prediction for next year's inductees.
I say it every year. Big John McCarthy and George St. Pierre.
Fair. I'm going to go out of left field. I'm going to say Big John McCarthy and Brock Lesnar.
Interesting.
And here's the thing. Here's a fight that will have to go in at some point, but they don't fit the Guida and Sanchez bill. Pat Barry and Czech Congo.
Yeah.
And Czech Congo probably ain't going in because he's in Bellator right now.
Yeah.
But when he's done with Bellator, that fight's got to go in. That one,
crazy.
That one was really important to the unpredictability and perception of UFC on TV. But man, it's great to see all this. Now, Joe, I posted a column a long form feature this week on a guy named Killer Cross. Mm-hmm. He's a pro wrestler with a lot of MMA background. And Future Stars of Wrestling in Las Vegas is putting on an MMA-themed show this weekend. Ryan Couture's wrestling on it. Stephan Bonner's wrestling on it. Gina and Dave Mazzani are on it. We've got Tom Lawler on there. The UWFI was the thing. Of course, you look back at Ken Shamrock versus Matt Hume, very clearly a worked fight, but it's on their records. Do you see more of this emerging? Now, pro wrestling and MMA have just such mountainous popularities. It has its peaks and valleys. Do you think more of this is happening? And do you think that more fighters will take a look at this? And it seems like the stigma's gone. It seems like they see it as a way to extend their career now as opposed to ruining it.
Don't tell that to Jimmy Van. Who thinks a lot of MMA fans absolutely hate wrestling, and they probably do. Some of them do, but I think the stigma is starting to, dissipate. It's starting to fade away. I know there's that's not the one Cain Velasquez is on, right?
No, but he is wrestling in AAA next month, so that's a big on their biggest show of the year.
Yeah, so it's interesting to note that there's things that are changing, and it could be a viable option, an avenue for mixed martial artists to either migrate to post their career, or it could be an option for them right off the bat. I mean, it all depends on one's priorities, one's financial outlook, right? But I think it is something that should be entertained. It comes with risks. Everything comes with risks. If you're an existing UFC fighter or mixed martial artist and you go and do any sport, professional wrestling included, or any entertainment whatsoever, there is the risk of injury. Nothing worse than a UFC fighter not having a fight coming up, or having a fight coming up and getting injured while doing something non-UFC or mixed martial arts related. So there are risks involved, but other than that, I think it's a fantastic idea for all.
I mentioned previewing the Bellator show. I messed up. That's next week, the Bud versus Ruben show. So we won't be talking about that one this week, but what we will be talking about is UFC 239, and this is going to be one hell of a show, Joe. That main card is just absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
This is obscene. But on the prelims, you have Julia Avila, a -230 favorite. Pani Kianzad, a +190. You have Chance Rencounter, a massive underdog, +360. Ismail Nairdaev is a -450. Then you have Edmund Shabazian, a -500. Jack Marshman, a +400. Alejandro Perez, a +180. Song Yadong, a -220. And then we get into the fights where most people are going to know who these people are. There are some massive lines on this prelim show, Joe.
Yeah.
What do you think? To me, that's just wild, some of these lines.
Jack Marshman.
Yes.
All day long. +400 on him. Yeah, $5. I got 5 on it.
Like, why not? It's hard for me to put a person who has won 3 fights in the UFC in the last 2.5 years at that level. Now, again, I'll always say it. Do I think that he's going to beat Shabazian? I sure don't. But that's got to be one. Pani Kianzad, a +190. That could be a close one, too. These women's fights are always unpredictable, although that's been swaying a little bit, Joe. I've said that quite a bit lately, and it's been in the favor of the bettors. Las Vegas has been right. The people that are betting have been right. But this is a pretty solid foundation for this. I mean, at least the way it looks, UFC booked these hoping that there were going to be a lot of early finishes.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it looks like, right? I mean, even the way they set up the card. But yeah, they're looking for some finishes here. I mean, you would have to assume all matchmaking, when it's done, you're booking an exciting fight in hopes that one of the two guys or girls, their strength shines and they end up with a finish. But this is one card where you're looking at saying, ooh, this could be a situation where none of these go the distance, right? So
yeah, Joe, there are no lines closer than like +155 and -175. The lines are just momentous on this show. One that I completely understand is Gilbert Melendez, a +325 against Arnold Allen, the -400. Arnold Allen, 14-1. He has won 5 fights in the UFC. He's 5-0. Going up against Gilbert Melendez, who has not won a fight since 2013, Joe. He has not fought since 2017. He has not fought more than once a year since 2013. Oh, by the way, he's only fought more than once a year once since 2012. I am not giving him much of a chance because the 2 fights that he has won in the UFC, Josh Thompson split decision, Diego Sanchez, all-time classic bloodbath that could have eventually went either way. I look for Arnold Allen to run away with this fight, Joe.
Yeah, runaway might be a little strong for me to agree with, but I do see Arnold Allen winning this fight. I mean, can you not just think about what Jeremy Stevens did to Gilbert Melendez, and you start thinking, okay, well, the book is there, leg kick, leg kick, leg kick, leg kick, and that was in 2017, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So it's one of those things where it's like the book is almost there. Edson Barbosa did it. I mean, Eddie Alvarez pounded him. Anthony Pettis outstruck him. Gilbert Melendez is not the same guy that was competing for Strikeforce and Shudo way back in the day. So I'm not saying its time has come, but he's 37 years old, right? A lot of MMA wear and tear there. I'm assuming he's got his school is successful. Everything is going good with the scrap pack. So this could be one of the few final fights left in his contract, and I think Arnold Allen runs away with this one as well. Not runs away, sorry. Arnold Allen emerges victorious in this fight here.
Just my suspicion, but I would assume that Gilbert Melendez had like a no-cut contract because there ain't no way keeping him on at that rate if they can help it with him being damaged goods. He was making $200,000, and that was, I think, during the Pettis fight, he made $200,000. So he's probably still making that. My God.
That was a big contract. That was the Ultimate Fighter contract, right? So
what, Melendez?
Yep.
No. That wasn't the Ultimate Fighter contract. That's when they lured him away from Strikeforce, if you remember.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. But there was a renegotiation because he was going to go to Bellator.
Yeah.
And then he got the Ultimate Fighter deal done, and that's when he was with Anthony Pettis. And that was a big contract. So
another interesting fight, I think. Random Marcos, who is a plus 180 against Claudia Gadelha, minus 220. If you would have told me a year or two ago that line would be that close, I would have been shocked. But we're talking about 2 people in way different points of their career. As it stands, Gadelha has, this may shock a lot of people, Gadelha has never won 3 straight fights in the UFC. Has only won 2 straight fights in the UFC 1 time, Joe.
Yeah.
Also, has never lost back-to-back fights. She is coming off of a loss. She has lost to people like Nina Ansaroff, who I think a lot of people would have compared to Randa Marcos a couple years ago as far as consistency in career. However, Randa Marcos has 1 loss in her last 4 fights. She beat Angela Hill earlier this year, finished her in the first round, something that we had not seen out of Randa Marcos in her UFC career, maybe only in Tough. How do you think this one goes? Because let's be honest, there hasn't been a lot that either one of these women haven't seen.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Randa's record, win-loss, 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 all right? Or draw, win.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost like if you follow trajectory, you follow patterns. Gadelha is supposed to win, and Randa's supposed to lose. And that's actually what I'm going with. I mean, this is such an unpredictable fight to me, Joe. Like, because there are points like, what does a split decision win against Carla Esparza mean these days? Yeah,
I don't know. What did that rear naked choke win 2 years ago that Gadelha had over Karolina Kowalkiewicz mean? Not a lot by the looks of it these days.
Yeah.
Jessica Aguilar, what did that mean? Nothing. Like, the only person that Gadelha has finished in the UFC is Karolina Kowalkiewicz. That's it.
Yeah.
Who's putting away Randa Marcos? Well, in the UFC, it's been Courtney Casey, and I don't know that happens again. Rose Namajunas did it on Tough, but I look at Randa Marcos' history, and she's also beat Carla Esparza via split decision. She's put away Angela Hill, who's a tough girl, but not a top level. Tisha Torres, I think, is a top-level fighter. I thought that she was going to win Tough, and she got beat in the elimination round by Randa Marcos. This is a very interesting fight, and I think a very important fight that people shouldn't sleep on. Speaking of the Hall of Famer, man, that's a weekend for Diego Sanchez. Goes into the UFC Hall of Fame, and then he's a plus 270 against Michael Chiesa, a minus 330. I might have to put 5 on it, even though I like Michael Chiesa here. Joe, this is a hell of a fight. This is a fight.
Yeah. $5 on Diego Sanchez for sure. Come on. I mean, that guy there, you just never know. He just comes there, brings it, and it's going to be fantastic. Chiesa, for his part, should remain somewhat stoic. let Sanchez just do what he has to do, trap him, take his back as early as you can per round, and let Diego fight the rear naked chokes and stuff like that. Because Sanchez is a ball of energy. The guy operates in a different frequency no matter what people say. Every encounter I've had with Diego Sanchez has been nothing but positive. The guy is just a wonderful soul, Sean. I cannot express to you. This guy is amazing. The original Ultimate Fighter, and he's still competing. Like he's the very first winner of the Ultimate Fighter, not Forrest Griffin. It's Diego Sanchez. People keep forgetting about that. And this guy's still competing against the top guys in the division. So I got all kinds of love for Diego Sanchez, and this is a courtesy, emotional. I got 5 on it. You know what I'm saying? Like this guy's fantastic. Chiesa just got to be smart. Chiesa smart, he wins. But my heart's going with Sanchez all the time.
Chiesa moved up and beat Carlos Condit and looked really good in doing so. Diego Sanchez has also looked very good lately. Beat up Mickey Gall real bad. One of the best performances of Diego Sanchez's career. If Diego Sanchez wins this fight, man, I'm not calling for a title fight or anything, but it's at the point to where you got to put him in there. Like, I think you should capitalize on that name value and throw Diego Sanchez in there with a top 10 name just to do it. And I don't care what weight division. You just do it. You capitalize. You throw him on an ESPN card second from the top. You make it worth it. I'm going Chiesa, but it would not surprise me in the least if Diego Sanchez ends up winning this. Here's a fight that I've been waiting for a long time, Joe. Not a fight. I don't give a damn about the fight. I don't care about Jan Blachowicz, plus 155. I care about seeing Luke Rockhold, minus 175. And as I've said, Joe, and I think we got about 75% accuracy on this, there's still a few days for this fight to not happen, Joe. And it seems like every time I say that, it ends up happening.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Luke Rockhold finally making his 205-pound debut. And it's against Jan Blachowicz, and he should be favored to win, but the lines are a little bit close, the closest lines on this show, maybe because of the unknown. And why is it unknown?
Sean Ross factor.
Yeah, maybe because of the unknown, because Luke Rockhold doesn't fight. He doesn't fight. He's had 2 or 3 fights happen since 2016. And I think he's had like 4 canceled. Does this fight happen, Joe? That's what I want to know.
Wow, that's even tougher than making the prediction for the fight.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say no.
I don't think he's ever fought at light heavyweight. I don't know.
I think this fight takes place, and I'll be rooting for Jan.
Yeah, the thing is, do I think that Luke has the skill set to beat Jan Blachowicz? Yeah, I think he's got the skill set to beat almost anybody in this division. I truly do.
Yep.
But
when he's on point, because if he's not, he doesn't look it.
Yeah. The only person that Luke Rockhold has beaten since 2016 is David Branch, who is a middleweight who competes at light heavyweight, who he was a minus 565 favorite over. But if you look at this, Joe, this is worth noting, I think. Some of his other wins in his UFC career. Chris Weidman, who is now a light heavyweight. Lyoto Machida, who has competed at light heavyweight, former light heavyweight champion. Michael Bisping, who probably, I would argue, may have been a better light heavyweight than he was a middleweight.
Yeah,
he was a damn good light heavyweight.
Yep.
Like, there are some of those. I think if he compete at that level, it would not surprise me to see Jan Blachowicz grind this win out, but I think that Luke Rockhold's going to take it. What do you think?
Luke Rockhold, despite my disdain for his personality and who he is, when it comes to being a mixed martial artist, is absolutely fantastic. Does have a special skill set, almost like an underappreciated submission game, right? The guy's got skills. He's got jits. He's a black belt for a reason. He's fantastic when it comes. That fight does get down to the ground, but sometimes his fighter IQ is sort of strange. or it leads you to believe, or you're like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? That's a big mistake. You shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And if he gets caught and doesn't react quickly, big trouble. Look at that Michael Bisping fight, right? I know what happened in 2016. It's 3 years ago, but you just never know. But when he's on, he's fantastic, and he can hurt a lot of people. So it's tough to say which Luke Rockhold will show up on Saturday night. And I'm not discrediting Blachowicz, his skill set either, because if you look up and down his resume and some of the guys that he's defeated versus some of the guys that he's lost to, this guy went 3 rounds. He went into the 3rd round with Thiago Santos, who's fighting for the title in that main event. So tough guy. Although that Patrick Cummins majority loss, we're always shaking our head at that one still to this day. But other than that, I mean, he's lost some pretty quality names and defeated some pretty good names as well. I mean, he avenged that loss to Jimmy Manuwa. And of course, when you beat Nikita Krylov, you're in the Hall of Fame talk, right? Come on.
Oh my God. My God. Well, that's not all, guys. That would be probably a good ESPN show right there that we just read off, but it doesn't end. Ben Askren minus 270, 245. George Masvidal a plus 205. This is a hell of a fight too. I'm not writing Masvidal off because, as we've seen, Ben Askren can run into trouble when people bring him the fight. Masvidal's bringing him the goddamn fight, Joe. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But do I think that Masvidal can get up when Askren drags him down? I don't necessarily. Consistently for an extended period of time, I don't know. But I've, made a very terrible living writing off Masvidal, and I'm not ready to do that anymore. I'm not ready to write off these guys who fought in Strikeforce and weren't all that, because as we've seen, they can put away Darren Till. They can put away Donald Cerrone. They can do that to people. Masvidal's got a hell of a resume, and he can compete at the top levels, or at least near it. And I'm excited for this fight. I'm going with Askren, though.
Yeah, it's tough to say, in my opinion, because Masvidal has that ability to shock and awe people when he's motivated. The only thing is, the MMA mileage on him is actually pretty high. Remember, he's got 46 fights. He's 34 years old. That's a lot of competition. 33 and 13. That's a lot of fights. So it's tough to say per se what's going to happen in this fight here. Ben Askren, like you said, if he takes him down on the ground, it gets ugly. It's very difficult to get up from a guy with that type of wrestling acumen. But Masvidal has precision, unlike some guys in this division. When he tags you and he starts unloading, the dude's a bad man. So you're going Askren. I'll go on the limb and say Masvidal. Why not?
Up next, we have the 2 greatest 145-pound women's fighters of all time fighting at 135 pounds. I think it is, isn't it? This is for the bantamweight title?
This is the bantamweight title.
You know what's great?
What's
if they miss weight, they should just make it a featherweight title fight.
Fantastic analogy. That's
I love
hilarious. Yep.
Like, why not? I think that's amazing that they could probably do that. Holly Holm plus 275. Amanda Nunes a minus 335. I am of the belief, Joe, that the top 5 women's fighters of all time in no order are Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Chris Cyborg, and Ronda Rousey, all things considered.
Yep.
Holly Holm sits right outside that list, and there are a lot of people that are not happy that Holly Holm got this fight, and I understand. From a sport perspective, I understand. She beat Betch Kohea, who gives a shit. Really. The Megan Anderson fight at featherweight, that was at featherweight. She should have beaten Jermaine Durandamy. She should have been the first ever UFC women's featherweight champion, but she wasn't. So as far as merit goes, it's not there at 135. Do I think it's there at 145? I do, which is confusing to me, Joe. Why not just make this a 145-pound title fight?
Yeah. No, very true. Very true. But the other thing that we should probably take into consideration, minus that Betch Kohea fight, you look at Holly Holm, post victory over Ronda Rousey, she was dominating Miesha Tate and found a way to lose. She would not pull the trigger against the Bullet, Valentina Shevchenko. Jermaine Durandamy fight, same sort of thing. Like, could have won that fight far more early, but just wasn't pulling that trigger. fights Betch Correia, takes her to the 3rd round to knock her out, and then fights Chris Cyborg. And again, you thought, okay, there's got to be more here to Holly Holm. Like, what's happening? Why isn't she just going in there? She's very disciplined, but almost to her own detriment. And the Megan Anderson fight as well. Now, Megan Anderson's tough. Don't get me wrong. She's super tough. But at the same time, I mean, Megan Anderson, if you put the pressure on Megan Anderson, just ask Felicia Spencer. Take her down, submit her. Right? I'm not saying Holly Holm needs to do that against Megan Anderson, but even in that fight, there's nothing in the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights, again, maybe 5 fights, remove Betch Correia, that's showing me that Holly Holm can be a world champion again. Love to see it. I mean, what a marvelous woman she is. I think she's fantastic. I met her. Great girl. But Amanda Nunes is a beast. She goes out there to kill. And she's going to go out there to kill Holly Holm. The only reason why she won't be able to kill her is because there's a referee in there and there's rules. But that's her goal. That's her job. And she does it. I mean, do you ever question Amanda Nunes' game plan and say, this could be a boring fight? No. So we'll see.
Isn't it amazing that these two have never fought?
Correct.
It's amazing. So many exhausted options in that division. But something worth looking at. I don't know if Holly Holm gets tired. And if this goes to the 5th round, we've seen Amanda Nunes put people away. We've seen her arguably beat Valentina Shevchenko. But I think that may be an advantage for Holly Holm if she can drag that out. And that's one of Holly Holm's specialties, is being able to drag fights out like that. However, it doesn't always go her way. But usually it doesn't always go her way against proven commodities at that length of time. This is one that you got to keep your eye on. I'm going Amanda Nunes, but I think if it goes to the 4th or 5th round, I think it's Holm's fight to win. John Jones, minus 550. Thiago Santos, a plus 425. Joe, here's the game plan. You walk in, you swing at John Jones. You do it in a responsible, technical manner, but you put hands on him. If you don't, you're going to lose the fight, Joe, because you ain't out wrestling him. You're not going to beat him in the clinch. You might catch him with something, but that's your chance, Thiago Santos. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime.
You better
win the title, eat your mom's spaghetti. I don't give a shit. Just throw your hands at his face and you might win. Does he stand another chance?
I'm rooting for Thiago Santos in this fight. 100%. I want to see what can happen if he touches John Jones. I mean, Jones can take a punch. Don't kid yourself. He's been tagged. Alexander Gustafsson tagged him. DC's tagged him. But Thiago Santos brings a different type of power. I know DC's a heavyweight and he should be bringing more power. But this is a fantastic scrap because, I mean, I've got rare. I mean, again, for those that have been tuned into this podcast for the past 3 years, happy anniversary, by the way. Yeah, 3 years. So you've heard me say it before. My litmus test in general is the amount of mainstream fan texts and points of contact that I get regarding a fight. And there's been some talk on this fight here, and a lot of it has to do with Thiago Santos' hype machine, that this is the guy that's going to knock out John Jones. Now, are some of these fans are educated, some of them not so much. They just like seeing violence or brutality, just like in Sean's preamble there about, touch him, knock him out, that kind of stuff. So I'm, John Jones has taken a punch, can take them, but Thiago Santos does not go away. Still one of my favorite fighters to watch in mixed martial arts as a whole. I love seeing this guy compete, and I just want to see if he can do what Sean Ross Sapp said and just go out there. You got nothing to lose. You've made it to the pinnacle. You made it to the apex. You have the opportunity to become a champion. You got to take that belt away. And don't forget, this guy's he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. So, he's got the skills if this thing goes down to the ground. But John Jones has an ability to nullify fighters. We saw what he did to Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith could not do anything in that fight. For 5 rounds was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I trained for this guy, and nothing's working. So we'll see what happens with Thiago Santos' game plan. But touch him, and you never know what can happen.
Joseph Boza says, John's more worried about getting his no contest overturned against Matt Hamill. Will he ever be focused against Thiago? I don't like that take. John Jones has done cocaine and PEDs and all this stuff that he's popped for and still won fights. He has had a million things going on. I don't think he's that worried about Matt Hamill, especially to this level. Just because he talks about it doesn't mean he's worried about it. You can talk about things that don't really, give that much thought to. John Jones is going to win this fight unless Thiago Santos connects him and puts him out. My God. Well, here we are, Joe. UFC 239, I got 5 on it. And I'll go ahead and do it. I'll put 5 on Thiago Santos.
Nice.
Just why not? Plus 425, miracles happen. I'll also put 5 on Masvidal. One of the lower lines here. But at plus 205, I think that he could pressure Ben Askren and maybe put him away. The other I got 5 on it, Jack Marshman, just because you never know at plus 400. It might be worth it. Joseph Boza says, Dana's been wanting to get that overturned so we can say he is undefeated. I haven't heard him talk about it. Maybe you can send me a link. Joe, 3 years.
Yes, sir.
Of Fightful. 3 years ago, I remember we had like one of our first shows and it went like an hour and 40 minutes. Well, why did it go that long? Because UFC ran 3 events that week that we had to preview. I don't miss that. No offense. I don't miss 3 fights. I like the one. I'm cool with that. We don't need a tough finale with nothing on it the night before a big show. What do you think of the adjustments?
I love it, man. It's just, but they got to keep going. They got to keep going. Like I said before, you can trim down this roster to the top 15 per division. And that's all you need to keep on the roster because you don't need any more because if a fight gets canceled, you could pick up the phone and call anybody in the world in that division, and they would jump at the opportunity to compete in the UFC. Make every single fight worth watching. Make every single fight relevant. And then people will start tuning in, and I think the UFC brand will – I can't tell you or express to you what it's like in good old America, but I know what it's like in Canada, and the appetite isn't the same as it was 3, 4, 5 years ago. When everything meant something. Now it's just like it's an afterthought for most people. If I think some soccer gets higher ranking or ratings than the UFC. So that says a lot in a Canada-like country where the UFC, Dana once called it the Mecca of MMA. So
speaking of, did you see where Draco Rodriguez got the call to fight on UFC this weekend?
Yeah. And
King of the Cage blocked him because he's a local ticket seller. He's making a fraction of what UFC would even pay him. The 10 and 10, a possibility of $20,000, but 10 guaranteed. Yeah. And all credit to Sucker Punch Entertainment, who were like, we don't give a shit if we have any working relationship with King of the Cage. We're going to bat for our fighter. This is wrong. I know that there was a contract, but it's almost an unspoken thing. You get a call from the big guys, let them go. This is going to hurt King of the Cage, and I think it helps Sucker Punch Entertainment. I have a lot of respect for what they did there, standing up for their fighter. That reminds me, have you ever watched Tropic Thunder?
No, sorry.
Where Matthew McConaughey is Ben Stiller's manager, and he flies out to the middle of the jungle just to bring him TiVo.
Oh, God.
That's what that reminds me of. I have a lot of respect for people who take care of their fighters in that regard. Your thoughts on that, Joe?
Well, I think it's fantastic. I'm not sure what King of the Cage is thinking, not letting, because it is an unwritten rule for grassroots promotions. They
gotta stash away all their Tony Lopez's.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like I listen as a grassroots promoter. Well, they're more than grassroots. They've been around for a long time. Sometimes losing your number one or a big ticket draw sucks, and I get it because that impacts the bottom line. It impacts the company financially. So I could see them putting up a fight, but there is the unwritten rule when one of your fighters gets called up to the big show, chances are you gotta let him go, or her.
Well, guys, you can let us go for now, but we're back this week. I'm going to post the UFC preview. I'm going to be here after UFC 239, so make sure you guys join me for that. That same night, Warren Hayes has a G1 Dallas review. I've got Impact Wrestling review. We're all over the place this week, guys. Thank you all so much. Follow Joe at Joe A. Ferraro. Follow me at Sean Rossat. But follow us at Fightful MMA. Until next time, we're out.